Hi guys, thank you Alex for introduction. Can you all hear me well? Right, back rows, yeah, okay. It's nice to be again here. I was speaking also last year here, so my talk is about clean code, a little bit story why we should care, then a few guidelines how to write better code. A little bit about myself, so my name is Antonio Perić-Mažar, I'm from Split, Croatia. I'm also co-founder of development and design agency Locastic. I co-founded the Symfony user group in Croatia also. For years I was involved in organizing conference for startup in Split. These are my contacts, so if you need anything just ping me on Twitter or send me email. A few words about Locastic. So as I told you, we are agency from Split, Croatia. Our services includes design, development, training and consulting, and mostly from this consulting part there is inspiration for this talk. Last year I showed you the picture of our office with blank walls. We moved, so here are the few pictures from our team and our new offices. I will start with a few questions. I will allow you to involve in that. So the first question for you is, who thinks here he's producing the good code, quality code? We all think that, probably.
That's right.
Okay, so what's the bad code?
Not maintainable.
Yeah, what's?
Not maintainable.
Okay, what else?
Unextensible.
Yeah, what else?
Untestable.
Okay.
No standardization. Not readable.
Anything else? So what's good code?
Which support
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Which support festivals?
Okay, testable code, yes. So, yeah, everything opposite from the bad code, right? Okay, I didn't know how to measure code quality. Actually, it's quite easy. It's like this. You take some project, you open that, and your reaction is the measure of the good or bad code. So sometimes you will find something that's like, I'm very impressed, and this code is good, but after a day or two that you are spent with that code, you will say, okay, this is awful. And sometime at first you will say, what the fuck is this? And that will be, what the fuck is this? I will start with one example that we had 6 months ago, I think. We got one project from the client that was Symfony project. And we needed to do code review because the client was not satisfied with the development team. First note, we got that in a zip file. So there is no Git, there is no anything. That is version control, and everything was clear from that. We are in graveyard. So this is the first screen. This is Symfony project, and I told you the only thing from the Symfony is that they are using controllers and they are using Composer to install standard edition of the Symfony. It was not funny for the clients. So templates are everywhere, controllers are everywhere. It's only one bundle, there is still Symfony demo bundle. Repositories doesn't exist. We have SQL queries inside. We are not have any security, so if you check, you will see on the next slides, nothing is escaped, so this is like really graveyard. There are a few more screens, so as you can see, SQL injection is like really simple. Password is not encrypted, it's plain text. Session objects is instantiated for every controller, so we have session start with every controller. Even worse, they're using globals here, same as Americans. And still, forms are rendered manually. They are not using forms. They are not using even security component. They are storing manually in session. So we told the client the only thing from the Symfony that the Symfony is installed in the start, and they have some word explanation about this, like this is more performance. I don't know what, but this was like one huge what the fuck project. I don't know what to tell them. So, but this is like funny for us, but this is not funny for the clients. They are spending a lot of money on this, and this is not the only project we found. This was one in my recent history, so I remember this project very well. They invested a lot of money in this, and they wanted this company to help to build this in proper way. As we told them, we can only start building this from the beginning. There is no way to refactor this. We will spend more time refactoring things there. And from client, you need to know that for client, from his perspective, everything was working. When he was clicking to the website, everything is working. So he had few bugs. Okay, so we saw from the questions and the answers that we all know what's the bad code, what's the good code. But still, our code smells. It's bad. It's not good usually, but sometimes, of course, it is good. So from all your things that you said, these are some things where our code is smelling. So if you are using globals today, the code is smelling. If you are hard coding anything, like URLs, APIs, that's also the smell. Long classes or methods, that's called smell. Deep structures, long and band names, lack of formatting, lack of standard. Today we have pretty good standards, so why we are not using them? Of course, overuse of public and static. I'm currently working on one Symfony 1.4 project, and everything is static, and it's really hard to maintain something like that. Too many parameters injected in your classes. Weird order of parameters, for example, if you have some optional parameter and that's like first argument, and then you are sending null or something like that, that's really stupid. We have God objects, which knows everything, can do everything. We don't do input validation, we don't comment our code. The code is bad if we need 1 to 2 sentences to explain, or if we need more than 10 seconds, let's say, to figure out what code is doing. Of course, if you are copy-pasting code, if you are never using inheritance interface or composition, that's also bad for our code. If code is not readable, so you said most of these things. And of course, it's not testable. To summarize this, bad code is hard to understand. That's if you have problem with understanding some code, and if it's not some complex business logic that's only related to your project, something doesn't fit well. Also, if it is hard to maintain, so code should be understandable. You should be easy to change something in your code. Of course, if it gives you headache, and of course, if you don't want to work with it. You find some project and you say, the project is interesting, but I don't want to work with this code, this sucks. Okay, why we are so stupid? Do you know what stupid means, actually? It makes your code smell. So stupid is something that you should avoid. This is from PHP world. It's avoid singleton, I avoid type coupling, I avoid untestability, premature optimization, undescriptive names, and application. And from these 6 things, I think, and we will all agree, this is the root of all evil. If you start pre-optimizing things, you will have some code that you won't use in the future, then you will need to remove it, you will need to refactor to stop doing that. And of course, we know that, but we are still using that. Why? We are not, as developers, we are not always the one who is most guilty for that. But sometimes we are lazy. We are lazy developers, we want to do something quick. Someone is bothering us, we just want to do some quick solution that will work for that bug fix or something like that, and we made a quick fix. Of course, when we made the quick fix, we probably increase our technical debt, of course. Sometimes short deadlines. Clients want to push us to the, limits. He wants that yesterday, and we need to deliver that. We do everything to satisfy him, and of course, we deliver the code that is not good, that is not testable, that is not tested, and of course, again, we increase the technical debt. I'm repeating the technical debt because on next slides, I have something very important for technical debt. Sometimes we have bad decisions. We are not the best developers in the world. We are trying to be best every day, but sometimes we make bad decisions. Bad decision can be made because we don't have enough experience on some field, or we don't have good specification or good explanation how things should work. Of course, a great problem is fast but cheap. You cannot have everything. If you have good and fast, it's expensive, of course. If you have good and cheap, it's slow. And if you have fast and cheap, it's inferior. So clients needs to pick 2 things from this. Fast, good, cheap, and he cannot have everything. You cannot have fast, good, and cheap solution. It's impossible. And of course, sometimes we think that we are the best developers in the world. We don't want to talk with other developers. We are stick and push hard that our decision is the best. And one of the biggest problem is that code has expiration date. Do you know what is the expiration date for the code? It's yesterday, actually. But that's normal. That's normal from the 2 points that's on my next slides. Language is evolving and developers are evolving. If something is not on that track, something is wrong. So first, one thing that we need to know: good developers are not just shipping the code. We need to balance between shipping and between code quality, and we should invest more time in code quality. So if it is possible, and if it is inside budget, of course, we are talking about money and the business always, we should invest more time keeping our code clean and investing more time in our code quality. Of course, sometimes we will need to ship, but then we should talk with the clients about, I don't know, 10 or 20% time to refactoring the existing code to reduce the technical debt. I told that developers are evolving, and I think my story is the similar story to which all of us have. So I think 6 or 7 months ago I was working on some project, and of course it was awful. And I started yelling loud, like, what the fuck, who wrote this? Of course, get blame. It was me, of course. I didn't even remember that. That was like 6 months period, 6 months before. And I didn't remember that I wrote that, because that was not near my coding style today. And that's a good thing, I'm evolving. If you are doing something, if you don't have that situation, you are stuck in the moment and you are doing something wrong. You are not investing enough time in yourself. Who had this situation? Like it. Of course, the language is changing, especially PHP. We have PHP 7. We have frameworks like Symfony. We change a lot. We got namespaces somewhere in 5.3 version. We have package manager today, composer. We have standards. We didn't have that 3-4 years ago. So it's pretty good to be PHP developer today, and we have some things that make us better developer. And one great quote from Martin Fowler, that any fool can write the code that machine can understand, but only good developers can write the code that other developers can understand. And that's basically, I think, the best definition for good code. And this is the quote from my summary, from my code. So it's actually from big data, but it's similar for the code. Like, we are always talking about good code. We are all doing good code, but then we have the project where session start has no reaction. So, okay, how to write good code? That's the good question. This is simple diagram which show us how to do that. Whenever we start the project, it's a clean code. If you are starting Symfony project, I don't know, you are using standard edition of Symfony, you remove the demo bundle or whatever, you have a clean project, right? You didn't write any code, so that's the most cleanest project ever. And then you start building first features, and you want to start code fast. Of course, you are always late, you have deadlines and everything else. Now nothing works, you go bug fix. Okay, you did something, but throw it and start over, because you cannot maintain, it's not testable, you don't understand what you did. If you want to start in a good way, you should start things slowly, code well, refactor every time when you need to refactor. If you have some change of requirements, you should adjust your code. If you have clean code, it should be easy. So adjust your clean code and then start over, repeat. It's a loop, always it's a loop. So just do slowly, do well, test that, of course, and you will have clean code at the end. Of course, always there will be something to refactor to make better, or if you show to another developer, he will say you can improve that, but try your best. Okay, what's the clean code? As I told you already, the clean code is code that doesn't exist. That's the cleanest code ever. Clean code should be simple, you should not repeat yourself. I assume you all know the solid principles. You should not reinvent the wheel. If you are using Symfony, and this is Symfony conference, there is a lot of third-party bundles that resolve most of your problems. So use them, why not? You should know design patterns, of course, and your code should not be testable, it should be tested. That's the big difference. And of course, clean code should be flexible, maintainable, reusable, and easy to refactor. So if we summarize everything, this is definition of the clean code. It's easy to understand, easy to change, and reusable. And of course, why we should care. It will spend too much of our time. It will steal our time is our money, so why we should care. Someone else will use that code, and you don't want him to have what the fuck moments, right? You want to be proud with your code. Actually, you will use that code 6 months later. You want to know what you build, so. Bad code does a lot of things, but none of things are doing good. You don't want to write a code just to be there. You should maintain it easily, and good code saves money and the time. So if you don't care about other people, if you don't care about yourself, I assume you care about your money. And this is the graph how good and bad code affects cost. So at the beginning you will save some money. You will have better. You will be quicker to developing new features, but at some point your technical debt will start spending some money. So you know what is technical debt, right? Okay. And here's technical debt. This difference between healthy and pathological project is technical debt. And this is the biggest thing about technical debt. If it's not repaid, it can accumulate interest, make it harder to implement changes later on. So it will be more expensive for you. You will lose your money actually if you don't care about your code. And second very important thing is our working flow. We are always say that we are writing code, that we are developing something, that we are building something, but in reality we are reading the code. We are not writing the code so much. So 10 to 1 is the percent of your reading code to your writing code. For example, if you start a new project and you need to bug fix something, you need to understand what's happening, you need to read a lot, and then you need to find a place where to change something, and then you can change that. So most of your time you will be traveling to your code, finding something, reading, understanding something, and then you will write your code. Okay, I will talk about some guidance how to write better code. I have some code examples also in the slides, but most of this is some talk, some guidance how to build cleaner code. I will start with the naming. If I ask you anyone in a hall or here, do you do proper naming? You will say yes, I do. But still, we forgot a lot of things. First thing is do not abbreviate your names. Use full names. You are not spending, I don't know, anything on memory or processor or whatever. Just use it because this is much more readable. If you have string B equal false, it's much more readable if you have string bold. It's same thing. You have today the PHP storm or whatever you are using. He will write the things for you, so you are not saving actually anything. Make code readable and meaningful names. That two things improves your readability of the code, and you should read your code very easy, like a book. So implement namespaces. It's very important. We are not JavaScript developers. We are not writing everything in one line. So white space is quite important, and it will save you time. You will need to read that later. And please avoid this. This is like two most stupid names you can have in your variable name. Data and total. So yeah, it's classic. You have total, then you have total 2, total 3, then something total is less than total 3, something. When you see this 6 months later, you will say, well, what this means. So use proper names for this. This is much more readable, right? Anybody from here can change this, but this logic, it's harder to change. And don't be silly, please, with your names. This is like nice code, but what the fuck this is doing? Maybe something serious, maybe it's not. So avoid having jokes in your code. That's really, the code is important. Okay, why naming is matter? Because good name should explain you three things: why it exists, what it does, and how to use it. And if you need some comment to explain that, you should change your name. You should not comment why you have a name for something. And your classes should be noun, and your method should be verb. I don't know, image processor, get image, something like that. Okay. Second very important thing is code standard. Lucas Kafka Smith once told, I think, in Twitter, I couldn't find that Twitter, but it was like, I don't care if code style is ugly, it's a code style and we need to respect it. So that's the truth. Inside your team you should have code standard. Even if it's your own code standard, you should have it. But today we have people which are defining standards for us. So why spending the time in reinventing the wheel with a coding standard when you have PHP field which defines that for us? And this PSR 0, PSR 1, PSR 2, so PSR stands for PHP Standard Recommendation, I think should be the base of your coding standard. You can, of course, build something on top of that, but it says how to auto-load basic code style and detailed coding styles. As we are Symfony developers, Symfony has its own standard. It's of course based on PSR 0, 1, 2, and 4. And if you care about your project in Symfony, you should use Symfony standard. Of course, it shows you how to use class names, how to return, how to whitespace, whatever you need for code standard. Use only one level of indentation per method. What do we want with this? We want to force single responsibility, and we want to reduce code complexity. As developers, it's very important about our mental model, about our short memory. When we are doing something, we keep everything inside our head. So if you have, 10 level of intention, I don't think we can handle that inside our head. Maybe 1% of us can handle that. But if you have small methods, if you have one invention, it's quite easy to follow that. You will jump from the code to code, but you will still know, of course, if you have descriptive names, you will know how to handle that. If you have multiple levels of intention, separate blocks and complex level of intention into methods. That will save you a lot of time. Your code will be much readable, and your mental model will be easier to follow inside your head. Regarding this level of indentation, don't use else. This is not possible in every situation, but I would recommend this. It's hard to start not using else, but you should. It will also reduce your level of complexity, of code complexity, and you will need to focus on your early return. If something doesn't work, return, throw exception, whatever. Use exceptions. Throw them, catch them. Don't have a return exception, that's on next slide. And if you have multiple level of intention, that means that your method is doing more than one thing, and you don't want that. You want to have small methods with doing exactly one thing. Also, polymorphism can reduce a lot of ifs in your classes, so use that, but do not abuse that. You don't want to have 20 level of inheritance in your classes, and then you need to, inside your head, track everything, what you did in previous methods. And this is just a graphic show how if-else works. Of course, it can go slow. And this is how it works if you don't have else. So it's much easier to follow this. If something is wrong, throw exception. If something doesn't exist, I don't know, throw exception or return false or something like that. Okay. Keep your classes and methods small. First thing, it's easier to test. And they are doing one thing, only one thing, if they are small. If they are big with multiple level of intention, they are doing a lot of things. Avoid returning null. Null is like root of all bugs in your application. Null is nothing. Of course, if null is in database, like value, that's okay. But if you are returning null, you are not returning anything. And keep your method small. Recommendation is 50 to 20 lines, but sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you will have the method that's easy to maintain, easy to understand, easy to read, and has, I don't know, 50 to 100 lines. That's also okay. And avoid side effects, avoid global states. By side effects, your methods, I don't know, if that's some service in Symfony that provides some logic, it should not return some template. I have that in previous example I showed you, or something like that. Should not, I don't know, use global session, global get, post, whatever. So try to avoid any side effect that's possible to have. Regarding the exception, I already told use them. Try catch them. Don't return exception, and then in your main flow you will know what to do. Of course, you sometimes you need to return, for example, false. If something exists in a database, you won't show exception. I don't know, not found. But in most cases, you should throw exception, and don't use your special code errors or something like that. And of course, there are special nature for the errors, so we have a lot of already predefined exception, like invalid argument exceptions, so use them, of course. Regarding design patterns, I won't speak too much about them. You all know what are they, so use them. If you don't know them, learn them, because they will save a lot of time. They are reusable parts of code that resolves some well-known problems. Okay. Next good thing that PHP has is SPL. How many of you are using SPL? That's still the low number. The SPL is very powerful thing in PHP. And SPL, as you can see, stands for collection of interfaces and classes that mean to solve common problems. They are actually make easier to resolve some problems that already exist. You can talk about SPL for, I think, 45 minutes or 1 hour. It should not be enough for show what SPL can use, but I will just show some classes that SPL has or interfaces. For example, for manipulating with data structures, for iterators, interfaces for countable, out iterator, recursive iterator, seekable iterator. You see which problems it resolves. And of course, some custom exceptions. So you use this. Next guide is law of Demeter. Do you know what is it? How many of you? Yeah, that is something that we are not using too much in PHP. But actually in Symfony, if you are doing things proper with dependency injection, I hope you are using it in proper way. So what's the definition of law of Demeter? It says that each unit should have only limited knowledge about other units and should only talk to the closest neighbors. So only immediate friends. I will show you that on example. And why this is important? Because it helps build the code that's easier to test. This is the usual Symfony example. So we have some customer-related class. We are injecting entity manager. Then we have some method, and from this entity manager, we are getting repository here. And then from that repository, we are talking to him by find one line. So this is breaking the law of Demeter because we are talking to some other object in this situation, and we want something from him. And we said we should talk only to the closest friend. And we can fix this easily to inject that custom repository that we need. So we are not injecting anymore entity manager, then getting the repository. We are injecting entity repository here, and then we are working without breaking the law of Demeter. What are the benefits from this? It's that we are keeping object simple. It's much easier to mock, and it's much easier to test. And we are also simplifying the dependency graph. And of course, our mental model, it's much easier to follow this inside our head. Okay, comments. Who is commenting his code? Are comments good, bad, or bad? Okay, we have good comments actually. What if you have some really complex business logic and you build something and you know that you won't remember that you didn't write bad code. It's really complex. Then the comment is good. Also, we have bad comments, of course. If you have, I don't know, if statements and then you comment that, or if you say for every part of code you are writing like tons of comment. Of course, good comments also are a license and things like that. And of course, bad comment is, that's all actually next. If you're commenting the tracking history of changes, that's like, what the fuck? Again, you have Git for that or something like that. But PHP doc is something you should use. You should comment the code with PHP doc. PHP storm is get generating that for you, is defined with a standard, so you should use that. But as I told you, there are good comments which will save your time. For example, if some method is doing really some custom logic, that's not bad code, but you have a reminder for yourself. Okay, use tools. There are quite tools as open source or some that have some pricing, and that can save you a lot of time. First two are related to coding standard. So it's very easy to check your code and fix all coding bugs, not bugs, but all coding mistakes that you have. Of course, you can use this also in PHP Storm. So PHP Storm is an amazing tool. So I'm not saying you to buy it, but it's really good tool. So you can set up your coding style, and with 2 clicks with your keyboard, you can fix all your coding styles issues. There is pdepend, performs static code analysis. There is PHP lock, a quick tool just to measure how big is your project. Then we have Sensio Labs inside. It's their product. You need to pay for that for some amount of your open source project. It's free. It did quite good analysis of your code, and of course there are PHP mess detector. It detects mess in your code. Copy paste detector, dead code detector. Dead code detector it detects some methods or part of code that you are not using anymore inside your project. And copy paste detector, of course, it's clear what does it. And this is a really good tip. I think you should learn more all these tools can be integrated in PHP Storm. That's a good thing. So learn more about your IDE. And the last tip is about ourselves. So improve yourself. I think the most important thing is to read a lot of code. So don't read the books. Read the books actually, but read the code. We have a lot of code on GitHub that's open source, where great developers are working on some project, and you can learn a lot. We discussed about lunch that most of us learn Symfony 2 from, I don't know, FOSS user bundle, because in that time the documentation was missing. So read a lot of code. Also, you have this live coding TV. It's something like Twitch for gamers. You can watch guys or girls how are they developing the application. It's time consuming a lot, but you can learn. Work in pairs. So pair programming is pretty good, and it's like from Scrum methodology, from Agile methodology actually. So work in pairs, you will learn more from each other, how you think, how you're connecting, what's bad, what's good. Do open source. This is like most useful thing. Don't be scared. I know a lot of developers are scared to commit something because someone will review your code and you will be stupid. I don't know. Just do that, because the guys who are working in the open source are maybe the best developers in our community, and when they are reviewing the codes for the clients, you need to pay a lot of money for that. In this situation, you get that for free, so you can learn a lot and you can improve yourself a lot. Show code to other developers. That's also the part of doing open source. Let's say I did this, I think this is better. Someone will say, okay, you don't know what are you doing, that's really stupid. Someone will say, okay, this is amazing, you did this really, really, really good. Okay, go to the conferences. You will learn a lot in conferences, you will meet a lot of people, and that's also some benefit for your development. And be responsive to your code. Your code is something that someone else will use, you will use. Be responsive to that. Misko from Google give great quote about the code. I live and breathe my code, and my code is mostly the fun stuff. You know, the logic, the stuff that makes application right. So he said, like, the custom application, the custom logic inside his application is mostly the fun. It's not bored, and he wants to invest more time inside it to have great code. He's actually breathing his code. And the last rule is Boy Scout rule. Anybody who is scouting or you know this rule?
I know this.
Okay. So what Boy Scout rule said, like, if you are going to the campground, leave it in a better shape than you found it. That's the same with code. If you are working on some code, spend some time to make that code, even for the line, better. Don't mess with something and leave it in a worse shape. That's the worst thing that you can do. Just do it a little bit better and leave it in a better shape. And if everybody from us do the same thing, the code will be improved. And conclusion is that clean code is structured, simple, and consistent. So we need to follow standard. We need to follow some rules. And the most important thing is to have rules inside our organization. Use Boy Scout rule, and there is no any silver bullet. It's only small steps and hard work. So I give you some guidance for writing the better code. If you start with the small steps and integrating all this guidance inside your code, you will see from after some time that your code is much more readable, that his coding style is improved, and that's in the beginning you will spend more time in that. You will investing more time inside your code, but after a while that will be normal and you will provide really, really good code. These are some references which you can check, but I need to warn you, if you start digging on a clean code, it's something that you can talk about that or learn about that like days. There is plenty of materials, but I think this clean code is Robert C. Martin. I hope you all heard about him. It's something that all these presentations are at the base are from that book. Also, this is something I would recommend. Google Tech Talks Clean Code. They are not talking about any technology particular. They are talking about how to use polymorphism, how to use proper naming, how to avoid defaults and things like that. They are talking about generally how to write good code. Very, very nice. I think there is 6 presentations from their Tech Talks. Thank you very much. Questions? Do you need the mic here?
I don't know. I would like to. It's not a question. I would like to. About comments. Actually, what was the most danger of the comments? It's not. It can become obsolete. It's not so tight coupled with the code. You can change comments and independently, or you can change your code independently of your comments. And if we will talk about some situation when you have really complex business logic, and at some point of time, after some change in requirements, you will change this business logic and forgot to change this comment.
That could be a problem.
Your neighbor of your colleague will be hurt, because the next guy who will read it, he will get the wrong understanding of what this code should do.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that's basically the danger. So we all want our code to be comment for itself, so to do less comments. And sometimes we have a situation where the logic is complex and logic is changing. So that's the good point. Every time when you change your logic, you should update your comments, because comments, if sometimes you have some complex logic, you will need more time to understand that, so comments are helping. That's the good comments. They are helping you to understand what your code is doing. But if you are doing that updating logic and forget to update the comments, then your colleague is fucked up. Yeah? He will read the comment and he will say we have bug or something like that. So always update the comments that explains the part of the code that you are commenting. Thanks.
Hello. How these rules improved the work in your company?
One thing I'm very proud inside our company is that we all, since day one, we are trying to have some standard. As we are mostly Symfony developers, we took, of course, Symfony standard, and we have some informal agreement on how to do our code. So the biggest improvement of that is that any colleague can switch to any project and work on any project without so much time spending, and boarding new developers is quite fast. That's, I think, the two most benefits that we have from this kind of coding standard, let's call it. And that's also a very important thing from clean code, that's boarding time for new developers is much quicker than if you don't have any standard, of course. One more question there.
Thank you for talk. Can you explain, please, why you should always return something from function? And does this violate common query separation date?
For example, if you don't return anything, you will probably have some bugs that it will be hard to track later, because in your main flow nothing is happening if you are not returning nothing. If you return null, you will probably in some situation try to call something or that null function or that null value, and you will also get some errors. So returning something from your function actually improves your time for debugging, and it's much easier to track your entire application. But sometimes it's impossible to return nothing. For example, you will return false if you are checking if something exists in the database. You won't return, as I told, exception. But if something is break inside your function, do not return, just throw exception. You will detect that exception and you will know what to do with that. That's the idea behind all this.
I have a question about a slide with injecting entity repository.
Okay.
What about if I need entity manager? So I additionally need to inject it or use only entity manager and get repository from them, and after that work it.
Well, the idea behind the law of Demeter is if you need entity manager and then you are talking only with him, that's okay. But in this way, we are getting the repositories from entity manager. So if you need some repository, why not to inject that directly and then work with that? That's, if you need to work that something directly on the entity manager, of course you will inject that and work on that. But it's easier to test if you inject directly the entity repository. Actually, that's one of the benefits from this.
I will add something if you don't mind. In this example, you can just create two different methods. One method will get something from entity manager and put it to another method. And second method will get this repository and query it, and then you will do not break actual law of Demeter, because responsibility of every method will be just a single thing.
Yeah.
If you got a legacy application,
Like this at the beginning, or?
yeah, like this legacy application, what would you do? Just refactor it or write from scratch if you need to support and maintain it in, let's say, 2 years or 3 years? What would you choose?
Well, just depends from the code to code. But for example, if it,
Code is terrible, horrible, whatever.
but then I will in this situation, which is suggested fine to rewrite everything, because I don't know where to start refactoring. This doesn't even use the security component. Like, I removed that slide, but in security configuration, you have still configuration from the demo bundle. So I don't know what for it. It's the same thing actually. If you start refactoring this, like they are not using, for example, here, we are not using they are not using forms here. So what to refactor? It's much quicker to build.
Yeah, it sucks, but it works. And but it brings money to business. And
yeah, it
right
works.
From scratch,
It works, but
2 or 3 months.
technical depth here is too big. So it works now. You will fix that in, let's say, 3 days, you will save that money. But what about new feature? You will spend more money implementing that than building this from the beginning. So maintaining this is more expensive than building this from the beginning. I'm sure of that.
You could use Boy Scout rule and just improve it. Until it becomes really good code.
We will do that if we were paid for that. We were paid only for reviewing the code, and we said it's no. Our stand here was this is cheaper to rewrite than refactor. You have a good point. In most cases, we are using Boy Scout rule. We change part by part in some way. For example, that's a matter of architecture, but in the project that I'm working in Symfony 1.4 that I mentioned in the beginning, our idea is to refactor that part by part, but we need to move to microservices and things like that. So that's different situation. But here is real. This is, I don't know where to start refactoring. From controllers, then you will have, they are not using, their security is like query to the database, get user store to session, and then check every time does that user exist. Really refactoring is spending much more money than building this from the beginning.
Yeah,
You know in Symfony that login you will build in half hour probably with security component. Yeah, question here.
Thanks a lot for the knowledge. Can you say something about to-do comments, like to feature that's gonna be done in future? Do you have some guidelines or something?
I have split opinion on that because in most situations we do that to-do comments and then we forget about it. That's from my experience, but I don't think they are bad. Sometimes you need to refactor something, you don't have time, you will put some to-do there, and then you will need to remember yourself to check that to-do and really resolve it. I noticed that a lot of developers do that to-do comments, but they are not checking the list for to-do later. So that could be a problem, but generally I think to-do, especially if you are using something like PHP Storm and you can search, or to-do comments are not so bad thing.
Okay then, and if it's reasonable to like put some instructions about feature that should be done, like for example for another developer.
But I think that's okay. I don't have anything against that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have a question also. What's your way for your company to implement all these rules? Because it's really huge work, and of course it's impossible to implement just from scratch and started to do voila, it's magic, it's all works. So which point you take first on the first level, which point you take in the next level, and how you implement this on your
I think the coding standard is something where we should start, because if you have well-defined coding starter, it's much easier to navigate to the project. You know where are the classes for the services, for the controllers, for the view, whatever you need, and you can much more easier read the code. Then naming, of course, because it's related to the coding standard, and then step by step, I think the thing where most companies are failing is the law of Demeter, that we are breaking that a lot. And I saw a lot of breaking inside my company and to other projects, mostly the twig templates, where you are chaining like 10 times or something like that. So if I go step by step, I will start with the coding standard, naming, using small classes, using small methods, of course, to have a single responsibility everywhere, and then I will move to complex things to law of Demeter, of course, to try to focus on having that inside our code. I think that's...
you have some element of control, the same, for instance, if you have newcomers to the team, or for instance, you have senior players, and thus you have some model for a team which all the time supports the states in a good level.
Can you please repeat the question? I didn't follow.
I mean, for instance, okay, you achieve your goal.
Okay.
Yes. So, but time is going on. We have a new team players, and this is new team players. Of course, can bring the ship to the code, to the overall company code standard and other things. So, who wants or how your team supports this state in a good level?
Code review. someone needs to code review before you can commit to the branch. I think that's the only solution in this case. And we are not doing that 100%, but we are trying to do so. You can commit, but your changes is applied only when some other developers review your code. That's
Okay, you personally do the review?
yeah, we as I said, we are not doing 100% as I would like to do that, but we are doing in most cases. Like someone needs to review, to check the code to see if he understands what's happening, and then if he understands from the first what's happening, then most of these rules are probably applied.
Thank you. Any questions?
I didn't spend so much time to talk about code review or testing because, for example, testing is something that we all should do today. So as I told in one slide, code should not be testable; it should be tested. Yeah. Okay. One more question here.
When we have a big project and we have a lot of tests, but part of this test is a functional test. And when we build on Jenkins, we have more than 4 hours built for test with all of these tests. And should we create more unit tests and test the code, or should we create more functional and integrated tests? Because we have a lot of integration systems, and part of it should be mocked, but we cannot mock all of them.
I cannot give you the proper answer for that question. I should watch in your system to see what's happening there. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the problem is optimization or something. Really don't. From this point, I cannot tell you what to do to solve your problem.
And the next question is, I don't understand what your position about exception. Should we create owner exception, like exceptions for each services, like specific exception, or should we use already created base SPL exceptions?
Depends. You have a lot. You see, if you can use SPL exceptions, use them. If you really need your custom exception, do it. But you can use only the exception. Just throw something. Of course, if something is repeating and that's special for your application, it's not hard to build custom exception. Just extend regular exception, build new one, and use that. So I don't think there is proper answer for that. That's your decision what to do. If I only suggest you, if you have already more specific exception, use that. Don't use just top level exception.
So need to split what exception we should use, create a new one, or SPL exception. We should like situation.
If you have something that can be covered with SPL exception, use that. Then the last solution should be to build your own. I think if that's already existing, if that's not exist, then build your own, of course.